Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. We are excited today to talk to you about determining your pricing and all of the mental struggle that goes along with that along the way. So welcome, Cody. I'm glad to have you here today.
Hello. Yes,
Hey.
always good to sit down and chat about a good topic with you.
Right.
So.
Yes. And pricing is one of those that, I don't know, like it feels like it would be a good topic, but it's one that a lot of coaches in the making run from, like literally run from. I can't tell you how many times I've heard it in a different language. A lot of times the language I hear is, I just want to do this as a ministry. That's the number one language I hear.
It's almost like a taboo kind of topic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And lest our listeners think that I don't believe in ministry, I absolutely do. I just want you to know that oftentimes the people who say that do really have good hearts and they really do want to provide a ministry. But after we peel back some layers of that onion, we realize that part of the reason that they're not wanting to charge has a lot more to do with fear than with the desire to just provide a ministry. So I like to always help my clients figure out a way to provide a ministry for people and still allow that ministry to provide for them financially as well. So I'm excited to talk to you about this.
Yeah. And I have certain people that I work with that I do as a ministry as well. But, you know, it has to be like the right type of person. It has to be the right situation, you know, all that kind of stuff. Because, you know, I think that I found that if people don't pay for services, that oftentimes they don't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
So it really has to be the right type of person with the right mindset and the right situation in order for me to personally make it a ministry. But there's nothing wrong with that, you know. It just has to be the right situation.
Yeah.
So.
And as we discussed last time, I think it was our last episode where we talked about investment doesn't always have to be a financial investment. Sometimes it can be of time, it can be of effort. And so I'm assuming, I know we shouldn't assume, but I'm assuming that with those people that you help with in terms of ministry aren't getting it for absolutely nothing, that they have to have some sort of investment. And I'm guessing it's an investment of their time or an investment of, an art form that they have or something. Yes?
Yeah, like there's definitely some sort of like parameters there to where like, you know, it's like, hey, like, yes, I will do this for you. However, this is what I expect. And if this doesn't, you know, hold up to expectation, then I'm going to have to stop. So, you know, don't take it for granted.
Yeah. You just draw that boundary right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's easier for you to do because you have already gone through all of the mental somersaults of pricing your services and determining what those prices are. And I think the reason that we go through a lot of those mental somersaults, honestly, is because determining your prices really has this underlying thought of we're determining our own worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
Talk to us a little bit about the journey you're on right now so that our listeners can hear what you've done, how you've progressed, and what that journey looks like. And I bet they'll probably see themselves at some point in your journey.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll just start from the beginning. When I first started coaching, you know, obviously, I think that almost every coach that wants to start coaching has the same sort of like deep emotional desire to just help people. Like that's all we want to do is we just want to help people because we know how it feels. We've been there, we've done that. And we just want to help people become who they're supposed to become, you know, and live the lives that they should be living. And that's an awesome trait to have. And I know from personal experience that when I first started coaching, I had that thought in my mind very, very amplified. You know, and to me, I was like, I do not want to charge very much because I don't want to take away from a person's progress that they could be making, you know, all that jazz. So when I first started, I was only charging like $75 or $100 a month, not even a session. It was a month. And, you know, at first I thought that was the way to go. And I started doing it. And it was very, very quickly that I realized that is just way too low because people weren't taking it seriously.
Cody, I can one-up you. Want me to one-up you?
Go for it. Mm-hmm.
I'm not typically a one-upper, but I'm going to one-up you on this one. When I first started, I was doing $100 for an entire set, like group package type thing, where it included individual sessions, it included group sessions, and it included a freaking $20 book.
Wow.
That I probably got for $10, but still, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys who are listening right now, you're not alone. If this is one of the things that frustrates you, I'm also going to point out the word amplified. I love that you use that word, because what that says is that thought never necessarily and ever goes away. No. You're just learning to turn up and turn down the volume on that thought, right? Like, and it's there, and you don't want it to go away. It's part of who you are, giving. You want to be a giver. You want to be somebody who is a helper. We don't want that to go away. We're not trying to wipe that away from your mind. But if that is the thing that is amplified, super, super loud in your head, and it's guiding all of your pricing decisions, quite frankly, you're just going to go broke. Or your family, even if you have all the money in the world, it's like, then that, I don't know, you might get questioned from your family. I don't know. But we're going to get away from that. So my mind doesn't go on a tangent, but I really do love the word amplified.
Yeah. And, I think that's just a natural thing for people. Like, we want to help people as much as we can. But I think that we need to be able to break that barrier in our mind that's basically just saying, like, hey, just because you charge more doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to help them as much. And in fact, you might be able to help them more because they're actually invested and they're actually taking it seriously. And that's the change that I personally made when I was, I've gone through several different pricing changes. Mm-hmm. So I started with the 75 to 100 a month. Then I decided to change that. And I was like, okay. And the reason I decided to change it was because of, people not taking it seriously. They're not getting the results. And it made me feel like a bad coach. I actually questioned, am I even good at this? Mm-hmm. I had a feeling I was. So I was like, I'm going to double my prices and see if that helps. So I did 200 a month. And that definitely did help a little bit, but it wasn't a ton. So I did that for a few months. And then I was like, okay, well, making the jump from 100 to 200, it didn't really cause anyone to say no. It didn't change my, how many people I was bringing on or anything like that. So let me just try it again. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try 300. And that's where I started to see the real kind of shift in people. To where they were taking it more seriously. They were more invested. They wanted things to actually happen, so they made it happen.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
The people so you said I saw a shift in people. What I'm curious about is, did you increase the prices for people who were already on your roster, or did you increase the prices and just bring in a different type of person?
So I just honored the people that signed on with me for the price that I signed them on for.
Okay. So the change that you were seeing wasn't necessarily in what it was in new people, right? It wasn't in the people that you already had. Okay. So I'm glad that you said that. I assume that might have been the case. I'm going to tie this back to something that we just talked about last week. And that's those different stages of change. And the reason I want to tie that back is because I think a lot of times when we are charging $100, what stage do you think we're bringing people in? People who are in what stage do you think are attracted to a $100 investment?
Probably the contemplative.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so if we're bringing in contemplative people, I don't always think, because we've talked about this before, where it's maybe they're just not ready. They're not motivated enough. The reality is they're just not in the right stage. And part of the way that you weeded them out, and that sounds horrible, we still want to serve those people, but we're serving them differently, right? We're going to serve them with our marketing. We're going to serve them with our freebies. Someone who's contemplative can download your free book, right? Mm-hmm. The people who are wanting to invest are in a different stage, and that is why you are seeing a difference. So I love that this is actually playing out, so that you all who are listening right now are realizing that we're not just talking, this stuff is real. And even though we haven't planned any of these connections, and those of you who don't believe us, we really haven't planned any of these connections, the connections are there. And so I want you to hear that as you are listening to his journey. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No sweat. So 300 was where I saw the change with the clients and them taking it more seriously, them getting more results, which made me feel really awesome. Right. But then I did that for 6 months or so, 7 months, 8 months, something like that. But then I was looking at my own numbers and I was like, okay, I wasn't full-time at the time. This is something that I was building on the side. And, I was just trying to make this something that I could do full-time. And I was looking at it and I was like, I cannot go full-time with this, with the way that I have things currently set up for myself. And that was a realization that I had to have with myself. And I was like, if I actually want to make this a career and not something that I just do on the side, I need to make something change. So I did another raise and I did it for $400 a month. And I was really scared to do that because I think 300 is like, okay, that's a decent chunk of money. 400 is very close to 500.
It is.
It is. And that
80% close.
Yeah. And that's like kind of in my mind, like, if I put myself in the mind of a potential client, that's kind of like scary. It can be, especially if someone's in debt and they don't know what to do. But I tried it and it worked. And it didn't really affect the amount of people that I was bringing on. People were happy to pay it. And I made sure that, I only offered that to people that I knew could afford it, and still make some good progress too. And that's, you find that out just from asking some basic questions about their finances, and you can kind of make an educated, I don't want to say guess, but, you know what I mean?
I do. I actually have a session that I call a treasure hunt.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't do that with every single client, but if there's somebody who is like, yes, I really want to invest in coaching with you, but I don't know where that's going to come from, I will actually sit down with them for a little while and treasure hunt, right? So find that treasure for them so that they're able to make that work. So go on.
Yeah. It's essentially the same thing. Yeah.
Yep.
So I started doing that and that was going really well. And then at that time, I felt better. I was like, okay, this is something that I could potentially like turn into a career, but it's still going to be tough. It's still going to be tight. I'm still going to have to like constantly have these new clients. I'm constantly going to have to, spread myself thin with my time. It wasn't ideal. So I recently invested into a business coaching program for myself. And I talked to my coach and basically he told me, he's like, listen, if you want to make this a career, you're going to have to raise your prices. And I was like, I just did that like 2 months ago, bro. And he was like, well, you're going to have to do it again. So, he helped me get 2 different levels of like programs. Both would be for me personally, this does not have to be about how you set up your programs, but me personally, I see a lot of value in a 6-month program. So I have 2 different versions of a 6-month program. One has more calls and a few like added bonuses, and the other one has less calls without, those bonuses. And just for total transparency, I'm going to throw these prices out to you. And I'm going to kind of, explain like the offers that I make for people as well. But essentially, here, let me pull it up.
And while he's pulling it up, for those who are listening, I just want to say, Cody, you don't have to do that. And so those who are listening and hearing these numbers, like you said, you don't have to do this particular thing. But I just want to say how much I appreciate your willingness to be that honest with our listeners so that they can hear not just the process of how you got there, but actual numbers so that they're like, oh, are people actually paying those numbers? And when you can say with confidence, yes, people are writing me checks for this, they can at least say, okay, he's not full of baloney. So thank you.
Yeah. And, I will say, I am being pretty vulnerable.
Yes, you are. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. But I think it's important because I want coaches to know that like, this can be something that you can turn into a career, and, you can charge a certain amount because your value as a coach to these people's lives is really impactful, and, it might seem like a scary number at first. I know it was for me. I remember the first time I tried to even pitch this to someone, I was like, my heart was racing and everything. But it worked, and then it worked again.
I'm number one. Again. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And, not only did it work with just like me getting the income, which of course is always secondary, like getting the client the help is always the first thing that I want to do. But, having the income to support this is a good thing, and the clients, not only are they able to afford it, but they're also making really good progress with it as well.
Yep.
And I have something to say after I give you these prices in this breakdown too, that I think is very, very important. So I'm going to roll into that right after.
Hey, don't forget, don't pull a Maria.
Yeah. So essentially I have two programs. One is called a platinum program. The other one's called a premium program. The platinum is what I would call like the normal program. With like less calls, and it's just more of like the base. And then the premium is for people that really, really want to invest into this. And they really want to make a big change. So for the platinum one, which would be the normal, 6-month program, it involves 8 calls. Each call is about an hour at a time. I tell them that I only take on about 3 people a month. And, I tell them like where I'm at with that, so if I only have 1 slot, I let them know. If I have 2, I let them know. If I have 3, I let them know. But I just want them to be aware that, I take my time seriously, and I want to make sure that, my clients have my full attention. And that one, the way that I price it is I tell them that I ask people to invest $37.50 for 6 months. However, if I offer like some sort of incentive to where if they're ready to move forward with like a decision, like that day, I would take off $500. So it's only $32.50 for 6 months. And I offer them a payment plan to make it more digestible for them, all that kind of stuff. But if, however, they are able to pay in full, I would offer another incentive to where I would take off an additional $500, so they would pay $27.50 for 6 months, with a total savings of $1,000. But something to keep in mind is that those discounts, I tell them, I'm like, those discounts are only available if they make a decision that day within 24 hours. Otherwise, if they want to, think about it for a month and come back, I'd be more than happy to have them. But it would be the original price of $37.50.
Yep.
Right.
Love it. What I really love about that, I want to pull it out because I hear a lot about the cash discount, and I hear about a decision right now discount, but a lot of times the decision right now is also paid right now. And so what I love about what you just did was you gave them the discount for making the decision, and you were also willing to do a payment plan if they needed that. And then just did an additional discount if they were able to pay in full. So I love how you separated those.
Yeah. And, it's important to do that, especially as a financial coach, I think, because like you want people to feel like it is digestible and like they can do it, Yep. I think that, maybe someone who doesn't necessarily care about a person's finances, like maybe a fitness coach or, something else, they might not necessarily do that. But I think that for us in particular with our space, that it does make sense to do that.
Yeah. So, and it also encourages them to make that decision. It's not a pressure thing. It's an incentive, and you're empowering them to make a decision right there.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah. And then, so the higher end, or I guess premium package that I offer people is similar. So it's a 6-month program. With those 6 months, there are 12 total calls. I give them a free ebook as well. And I also offer a 30-day termination guarantee. So what that means is that if after the first month, they're like, yeah, this wasn't what I was expecting, this isn't what I need, I want to back out, they have the option to do that. And, they're only on the hook for the first month, so I do not offer that with the platinum or the regular program. Once you're in kind of thing.
I love it. My follow-up question may be answered soon. I'm just going to I'll throw it out here. When you do, you haven't told us the price yet. So when you do your 30-day, what's it called? Termination fee. Thank you. When you do that, do you do 1/6 of the full cost that they did, or do you have it set in?
It's slightly more.
Okay, go ahead. Share, please.
Yeah. So, and another thing I want to point out about this one too is much like the first one, I said that I only take on 3 people. This one, because it's more time invested into them, and again, with me wanting to make sure that I give my time to my clients and it's very intentional, I only take on 1 person a month for this. So not only does it help them, but it also helps me as a coach because it creates that sense of scarcity,
So when you say 1 person a month, Cody, I'm just asking the questions that I'm assuming some of our clients have, our listeners have. When you say 1 a month, are you suggesting that you add 1 every month, or that when someone comes in, they are your monthly person, so for 6 months, you're not bringing in somebody else? No,
I only add 1 a month.
Okay, so you could essentially be coaching up to 6 people in that program every month once you get that. Okay, all right. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep, for sure. So with this one, it's the same exact kind of structure with like the incentives and the discounts, but the pricing is different. So for this one, what I ask people to invest is $6,000 for 6 months. Now, with that, that incentive to where if they're ready to move forward with a decision today, I then take off $1,000. So then it would only be $5,000 for 6 months.
Okay.
I offer them a payment plan with the $5,000. And then I also tell them, hey, if you're able to pay in full, then I'll take off an additional $500, making it only $4,500. And that's basically my structure. Now, what I will say is that, whether you're a newer coach and you're listening to these numbers and you're like, holy cow, I don't even know how I could even ask that. You don't have to get to this point right away. If you want to like test the waters, like kind of like what I did and just gradually increase, then you can totally do that. But I want the listeners to understand that I have, these prices have been well calculated to not only serve me, but also my clients as well. And I have clients in both packages or both programs, both the platinum and the premium. So people are willing to pay that if they really believe that it's going to make a change for people. Now that's your responsibility as a coach to make that change and stand up to your word.
Yeah.
And if you feel confident in yourself and your abilities and your practice, which will come with time and experience, which is something that, I've been able to build up over time, then you can and you should, set your prices at something that you feel is going to be beneficial to both you and your clients as well.
Yep. And so for those of you driving who wanted to do the math but aren't doing it in your heads, with that platinum pricing, with the premium pricing, at the $5,000. So if they were to make the decision today, that $5,000 comes to $833 a month. And if they get the discount of paid in full, it comes to about $750 a month. So I just want them to be able to wrap their minds around that, so break it down. So with that breakdown, can you tell us a little bit about your termination fee? I want to make sure I got that correct this time. What does that look like?
So with the premium, if they were to do the payment plan, I work with a payment plan, however it works best for the client, you know? So if they
Could
have
be
like
half
a sum of
now,
money,
half later
yeah, if
type of
they
thing.
have a sum of money where it's like half now, half later, great. If they need it to be a monthly thing, great. But typically, you know, if you were to do a monthly thing, I would do like 1,000 for the first month and 800 for
Perfect.
the remaining 5. So
Okay.
that's what the termination fee would be $1,000.
Gotcha. So they just
and it's the
don't
same,
they just don't pay anymore. You don't give them anything back.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how that works. Now,
And
what
it's
if
the
they
same
did
thing with-
pay half? Like, would you just be like, it's $1,000? Like that's where
Correct.
you okay.
Yep. Yeah, and if they did like the platinum, which was the lower or the normal program,
They don't get this
you know,
anyway.
again, those payment plans vary from person to person depending on what's best for them. Obviously, the more that they put up front, the less that it's going to be for the remaining 5 months,
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
So with that, you know, a typical one would be like $750 for the first month, $500 for the remaining 5 months. And something to note too is that I give people the option to continue after 6 months, so they don't have to stop if they don't want to. But because they've already done the first 6 months and they've made that initial investment, and by that time the coaching is more scaled back. You know, it's for me it's like once a month with some check-ins. You know, if they want to continue, I give them a little bit more of like a discount or kickback. And I don't charge the $500 a month. I don't charge the $800 a month. I lower it down to what I was doing before I made these programs, which was $400. You know, so they're still, you know, getting the coaching, they're getting the support they need for just a less price because they've already gone through the initial 6 months.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
so
Fantastic.
that's how I personally have it structured. But something I want to make sure the listeners know, and I think it's very important for them to hear, especially with like hearing some of these larger numbers being thrown around. There is absolutely nothing wrong with charging people based off of their income. Okay. Some may disagree, but I think that if someone has a lower income, and maybe they can't afford these prices, then I'm not just going to say like, oh, you can't afford me, like go away. You know, that's not how I'm going to structure it for people. And that's not how I feel.
I honestly, I mean, I know we don't know all of our listeners, but I really, really hope that the type of listeners that we are attracting right now, that none of them would do that.
Yeah. And I don't think any of them would, you know, because we all, I would imagine that all of us have good hearts, good intentions, and that's just the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
So, that's why I got into this business, was to first and foremost help people. So if this structure doesn't work for someone, and I know that, I'll take it upon myself to basically tweak these numbers to make it be something that can work for them and that they can make good progress with. However, if I'm going to do that, I just want to make sure that it's someone that I really, really believe in, someone that I really would want to work with. That way it's worth my time. I'm going to enjoy it, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the people who have, you know, maybe a higher income or something like that, they should be able to, you know, afford those packages that I have. And if not, then no sweat, you know? But I think it's important to know that, you know, just because you have a quote unquote set rate doesn't mean that it can't change if it's going to benefit your potential client.
Right. And I think I've also seen some people do progressive pricing as well. We don't need to get into the nuts and bolts of what that really looks like. Just the overall idea that is that as you're working with them, their cash flow becomes more and more friendly, right? And so that frees up some more money that they could then pay you more with later on. So just that reminder that, you know, just because they can't afford something specific right now, if they're working with you and what you're doing is working for them, it eventually will free up a little bit extra money for them as well. So you can get creative in how you're helping people and what that looks like. We've also heard about scholarships. Right. So there are some people
Yeah.
who have more money than you're charging. And they're like, Cody, you've changed my life. I don't even know. I don't feel like I've paid you enough. And instead of accepting that extra money from them, you can actually say, you know what, there are other individuals who want and need what I have, but they're not able to afford it. How would you feel about setting up some scholarship for them? And so I've seen that done as well. And I think the more open-minded you are and the more creative you are in terms of what you're willing to do, you can serve a lot more people than you think. And then the final thing that I'm going to say is, rather than when it comes to the people who can't necessarily afford your services, eventually your time might run out, right? Like time is the one thing that does not replenish itself. When it's gone, it's gone. So it's really, really important and a fantastic service to have something available to those individuals who can't. And one of those things is like the ebook. I know that you include that with some of the other services, but there might be someone who legit can't afford your services. And you're like, I also can't afford the time right now to help you, but I can give you this resource. I can send you to this place. The other thing, the last thing I promise I'll say, is that if they're not a good fit, or you don't have the time, or someone else is cheaper, feel free to send people on to other coaches as well. There's nothing wrong with that, and make sure you vet them, make sure that those coaches are a good fit for that individual. But if that's the case, I think that's one of my favorite things about our Facebook group, is that we have a group of dozens of coaches where it's like, if they're not a good fit for me, or I can't afford my time, or they can't afford my services, I can pass them along to somebody like you, Cody, or someone else who's in the group. And I think it's a really great resource. So lots and lots of ways that we can serve people.
Yeah, and some of the things that you mentioned are stuff that I do as well. So, like if there is someone who, just can't afford it, or they're in a really, really tough spot, but, maybe it's not someone that I want to bring on as like a ministry, or maybe I don't have the time for it, or, whatever it might be, I do give them my ebook for free, just because I want to help them. I also give them something that I created called the 3-step money map, which I think we've discussed before. And, I give that to them for free. And I give them, just a general kind of like map of like, a step-by-step kind of goal tracker. And I give them all those resources simply just because it didn't work out with a coaching relationship doesn't mean that I don't want to help them in some way.
And you can charge for some of those things too. For those of you who are listening, I know you know that, but for those of you who are listening, he said the word free a few times. And I just want you to understand that if you're trying to help them invest in themselves, like we've talked about the importance of that before, and you have these resources, in our mind, sometimes it's like, well, I've already created the resource. Why do I need to charge for it? Right? It's already there. You did create the resource, so you're kind of getting paid for the time on that, but you're also encouraging them to invest in themselves. So it's not a selfish thing. It's actually asking them. So even if it's $5 or $10, having some of those resources that are for sale, it also helps them exchange money, which gives them the courage to say, yes, I'm going to invest in myself for this. So
yeah. Now, Maria, I know that we're kind of coming up on time here, but I'm curious if you had a similar kind of story, or a similar kind of like journey to find your pricing to mine, or if yours was different.
Well, it's similar and different, like most of our experiences. So as I one-upped you at the beginning of the episode and told you I charged even less than you did. And I think a lot of that was just because of that mentality that we've talked about. I went through a quote, pay off all your debt program. And I think one of the unintended consequences of that tends to be a scarcity mindset by the time we're all done. And so I think I got stuck in that scarcity mindset in the very beginning, and it was kind of passing that along to the people who were interested in services. So that's where that journey started. My journey is a little bit different than yours because I had a lot of spaces in between where I had to literally put my business on hold. I'm not the primary breadwinner in our family. I'm the primary baby maker in our family. And so we had a couple of those in between. And so I never really needed the income. So I didn't have that push, that incentive to make me go out and do the things that you were started doing so early on in your business. I will say, though, the last year and a half, 2 years, I've actually structured my pricing a lot differently. I do charge a lot more, very similar to what your prices are, actually. I just don't have it as nicely laid out as you do. And hearing you today actually has me going, yeah, I think I want to lay that out a little bit more and in an order that's digestible for people. Because I also, like you, don't take on a ton of clients. I have to absolutely love the people that I bring on, because I do so many other things that I have to be very careful about how many I bring on and who those people are. So a lot of times I don't even have pricing like on my website, for example. And I kind of feel like we've talked about that before. And there's always this debate about price on the website or not on the website. And I actually love the idea of putting it on the website, but I've always held back from that because my pricing has been very tailored to people. And what I love about what you said was, this is the core, and then I tailor it. And so I might just steal some of that verbiage, right, to actually throw on the website. But mine is definitely in the 5 figures. It's not 5, sorry, 4 figures. And so it's thousands, not hundreds, to work with me. But I very much like you, Cody, if there's something that they're like, oh, I'm not able to do that right now, is it because you are not able to do it? Is it because you don't want to? Like, we kind of go through that. And sometimes I actually let the client come back to me with what do they think they could do. So rather than just give discounts, I will say, here's what I'm thinking, talk it over with each other, right? And come back to me. And if I find that to be fair, I will go ahead and sign them on. If it's just a change in price, I might actually just lower how many months that gets them. Right. So, for example, if I quoted something that was like $3,000 for a certain number of months, 4 months, 5 months, and they come back and say, we can handle $1,500 right now, they might only get that for 3 months. And then it brings them in, allows them to get that journey started. And then we can go from there. Because what they're saying is, I want to get started and I just can't afford that number right now. It's that scary. And so instead of discounting the services, I discount the number of months, the amount of time. Does that make sense?
Right.
So, and sometimes if it's something that feels less affordable to them, or they want to do that, but they're scared of like, what does that even mean? I might increase the amount of time, keep the same price, increase the amount of time, but maybe lower the number of sessions, or do a lot more sessions in the beginning and taper that off like what you do. So it has been a lot more tailored to the actual client. That's not nearly as helpful to our listeners as what you just laid out. So I'm kind of sad that we ended on that note instead of flipping that around. But I think what I have really gotten from this conversation is how to be able to do the higher pricing, like you mentioned, make it digestible so you can put it on there and still be able to serve the client. And I absolutely love that. And I think, I'm saying I think because I'm trying really hard not to hold myself accountable on this actual podcast. I want to change that on my website. I just have not gone out and hired someone to do it and haven't figured out how to do it myself. So my website hasn't been changed for a long time, but I'm saying this out loud. You're hearing me. The listeners are hearing me. It needs to be on there. And I think that what you provided, was an option for how to make that work.
Yeah. And to wrap this up, I just want to make sure that the listeners know that there is no right or wrong amount for you to charge. You should absolutely do what you feel is best, not only for your clients, but also for yourself. And, there's nothing wrong with trying things out, whether it be raising your prices and trying it and it works, then great. But if it doesn't work in some way, maybe it's too much for your clients, or maybe, I'm not sure what, it could be anything. But, if you try it and it doesn't work, you can always change it back or go back in some way, right?
Yep.
I think the biggest thing that I just want everyone to understand is that no matter how much you charge, I want you to make sure that you know that your prices and the prices that you determine to set are not just for you. They are for your clients as well. And that's something that I even tell people, like, as we're discussing this, the money, the investment side of things, when we're discussing it, I tell them that I'm like, these prices while it does benefit me, it's really not for me. It's for you, because you're going to make this investment and you're going to take it seriously, and you're going to make a real change. So as long as you fully believe that, and not only believe in it, but then also show up and deliver for your clients, you're going to be fine. And it's going to serve you and your clients. So that's the biggest thing I just want everyone to know and hear, is that no matter what you decide to do, just make sure that you show up, you do what you're supposed to do, and that, it's going to benefit both you and your clients.
Amen, brother. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And the last thing I'm going to throw out there is it's just to bring it home, was the termination fee. I love that you have that option in there. Several episodes back, I wish I remembered how many, but we did talk about the money back guarantee. And I think this is a really, really great solution to that you don't have to give it all back, right? Yes, I love that. And so as those of you who are listening, you can hear that some of the stuff that we talk about, we are literally implementing as we talk about those things. And so this is a trial and error for us too. We do not come on here pretending to know all of the answers. We are in this with you and beside you. So don't feel like, we're just up on a hill and we know all the answers. We don't. We're trying these things as well, and we're living the stuff that we preach. So I just think it's so neat that you were able to take that conundrum, if you will, and find a solution for that. And so I'm excited to actually try that solution as well. And I'm encouraging all of our listeners to come up with something similar, where it kind of gives them that push of, yes, there's some security there for them, but it also does not tie you up with, losing everything. So
yeah. Yep. So, alrighty, guys, we are out of time for today. So we're actually a little bit over. Yeah,
we went double what we're wanting to go. That's hilarious. But I think it's all really, really great information. So anyway, you guys, if you are loving the information, please do send us a review, send us questions, put a rating wherever you're listening to this, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, any of the places that you're listening. We really appreciate that. We've seen a huge influx in people who are coming into the group just from hearing this podcast. So we're excited to be meeting all of you. If you've gotten into the group, no one knows I'm going to say this, but if you've gotten into that group and you would like to have a personal conversation with either Cody or I, just message us. Let us know. Say, hey, I heard you guys on the podcast. I'd love to have a conversation. We would love to do that with you. And that is it. I think that's all I've got for you today.
Yep,
good?
Absolutely.
All right. All right, you guys.
Everything Maria said, do it.
Not always, but just in the last 30 seconds. All right. You guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks as always for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our host by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching. Music provided by Summer School.